Hey, good morning. This is Yon Toze with ReThink Tech Foundation, and this morning, I'm bringing you digital shift tips and troubleshooting. And today, our first tip is on Excel, a very unique feature in Excel. We talk about absolute value versus relative references. Again, welcome to the digital shift. If you've ever copied for a formula and wonder why the results were looking so wrong, this video is for you. And if you also want to learn how to copy uh, values the right way in Excel, then this video is for you. By the end, you'll know exactly when to use relative references, when to lock a cell with absolute reference, and how this can save you a ton of time and frustration. So if I followed you, I'll be demonstrating on my screen here. As you see, I already have my sample data entered, and I will be performing some simple calculations, and I will be using relative reference and an absolute reference to see the difference between the both of them, right? So I'm going to insert a blank row here, just about something that I want us to do. So I will insert, what is that? Okay, insert a column. Um, I'll call it absolute reference. Sorry about that. 1 second here. That column should be inserted somewhere else. I'll delete that column. Give me a second here. Well, you just learned to delete columns, so actually I want a column somewhere here. Sorry about that. Okay, and I'll call that ABSOLUT, absolute. Okay. Um, ABSOLUT, absolute reference, ABF. So just make that open up a little bit for us to see. There you go. So the first thing we'll do will be doing the relative reference calculation in Excel to see how that works. So that's very simple. To do that, I enter my equal sign and I use my cell references, B6, and then I bring my operator sign, B times C3, enter. It gives me first value, and then I just drag it down and it gives me the rest of the result. So that's relative reference. That is the default way Excel does calculations and work in Excel is by using relative references, right? So what happened here now was that Excel just used the B7 by C7, D7, B7 by C7, and then B9 by C9, and then it used to reference cell side by side to perform a calculation. But our point here is, so that's how we work with absolute reference, right? Does the calculation. But let's get a discount first and we'll actually get the total, vision of what we'll try to do, accomplish with absolute reference and relative reference in Excel. So the next step is to find a discount rate. It's given to us, which is 5%, and it's 5% of the total cost or the amount the customer paid for their goods and services or services. So I use my equal sign, set the total cost times 5%, which is accurate, and I press my enter key. It gives me $3.75 as a discount for customer for the first, for the first item. Okay. Now, I also just how we fill this the rest of the cell out here from B7 to no from D7 to D12, and it gives us the right answers. I want to try the same thing with the discount cell. And then once I do that, you realize that it's giving me a blank cell here, an arrow, non-value here, and the rest of the value look a little bit off. That's because Excel is using relative cell references to perform the calculation. So the first calculation was based on the value in D6 times the value in B in C3, right? That's how we got that value. If you look the next one, so it's going to take a next step back and use the next cell below that. If I look there, it's using D7, which is this one, this value in D7 here, times the next cell underneath discount is C4. But that's not what we want. We want to reference the discount rate, not the empty cell. If you look at this value, it also took the text, right? C5 is using C5 and D8. Where's D8? So this is D8 12 times a number. In Excel, if you multiply, we cannot multiply a number and a text. So that's why you give us the non-value error. And the same thing it does here. So you realize the entire discount, only the first discount rate is correct, but the rest of the value for the discount are all wrong. So that's where absolute reference comes in. So we're going to go to the next column that I label absolute ref, and then we're going to enter the absolute reference cell formula in there and perform the calculation. We'll see the difference between the cell with the absolute reference and the cell with the relative reference calculation. So let's move on. Right on there. Put the equal sign. I said the total cost, which is here of the item, times the discount rate, which is 5%. And to get an absolute reference, that means I'm just locking in that cell. And to lock in my cell as an absolute reference, I use a dollar sign before the name of the column. In this case, it's C3. So I use a dollar sign before the name of a column and a dollar sign before the row number. So that is the format for how to absolute reference a cell. So what we tell in Excel is that do not change the value after I use my fill handle to fill the rest of the value for the rest of the item. Do not change the reference to C3. Use C3 and multiply by all of the rest of the values here for the product. So we'll press that enter key. It gives us the same answer that we had here. And then now I'm going to use my fill handle to fill for the rest of my value because that's the easiest way to work in Excel. So I drag it down all the way down to the last one. So you realize that there's quite a contrast between column E and column F. But we're trying to perform the same calculation, right? Finding the discount. So if you look there, and if I can move back onto F here, this value right here, the 50 cents, and which two cells are being used here. If you go back to the address bar, you see it's using D7 times C3. So you look at it, you see the dollar sign, column, dollar sign, and row. So it's absolutely referencing this discount rate in that cell, and it did not change it for all of the rest of the calculation. So that is the beauty of absolute reference. And that is how handy absolute reference is. That means lock in the cell, do not change the cell value, no matter where I move that cell, no matter where I copy it to, no matter what I do with it. The reference is you always reference that cell. And there are most cases that we working with data, we want to maintain that particular, reference to a particular cell that we are using on different parts of our worksheet to perform different calculations. So that is where absolute reference comes in handy, and it's very, very, very handy for us. So just with so that's it for absolute reference versus relative reference in Excel. It's a simple concept, but incredibly powerful once you understand it. Next time you're working with formulas, remember dollar signs are your friend when you need to lock cells. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give us a like, subscribe to Digital Shift, and share it with colleagues who use these tips. Follow the Digital Shift for more weekly troubleshooting tips and tutorials. See you in our next video. Bye bye.